your personal, we can go top 3, top 5 country acts that you, maybe of all time. Can we go there? I'm so curious.
Yeah, I mean, we can always go there. I think when you combine talent with performer with just the human being, I'm not sure there's a lot of guys better than Keith Urban. And Keith went through so much in his life with addiction that I think we've sort of glossed over and forgotten. And I'll never forget when we were on tour with Keith. Number one, it's the only act I've ever toured with that we sat down and we watched every night's show because he was that good. Like, it's the same show over and over and over again. I don't give a damn. I was watching, like, his band is spectacular. He's spectacular. I had to watch every note. But what was cool is that when he, and I don't think I'm violating any, like, rules of trust here, but I think this is probably known at this point. But when he was backstage at the end of a show, at that point in his life when he had just married Nicole, what was amazing to watch is, you always see an act go off stage at the end of a show and they wait for the crowd to roar for a certain amount of time. Then they walk back out for the encore. It's so contrived in every way, right? But Keith, that was a trigger for him as an addict where, like, at the end of a show, he had such a rush. He had to figure out what to do with that momentum and rush. So he called Nicole every night and would just talk to her until he was calm enough to go out and play the encore. And if that meant that there was no encore, cool. Like, he was doing what he had to do to listen to his body and his wife. And I thought that was so cool, like, just in a perspective way. And they would also, they would back his bus up to the back of the stage. And at the end of the show, he'd walk right off stage, walk right to the bus and leave. And it was so funny that a lot of people in the venue that didn't know Keith would turn around and be like, well, what a snob. He's walking right off stage and not saying anything. But for him, it was like, I need to get out of this environment so that I can bring myself back down to where I need to be. So I think, like, Keith the human being. Also, first day on that tour, I'm setting up, like, because for the band I played the fiddle mostly, but I also played the piano, the organ, a guitar, an acoustic guitar, a dobro, a bunch of other instruments. And so I'm setting my keyboard up because, you don't have people to do that for you most of your career. And, like, I look over on the riser and he's like, hey, I'm Keith. You need anything? And I'm like, I know you're Keith. Thank you. And but I saw him again, I think a year later, and hadn't talked to him since we left that tour. He remembered my name. He remembered everything about me, which I thought was, like, not every headliner's that way. So I think Keith, the human being, plus Keith, the guitar player, is just like, I could listen to him play all day. So I put Keith as an all-timer. For talent and ability, while they're not, I say this with love, the most exciting show, I don't know that there's anybody better than Little Big Town, like, vocally. Like,
I love Little Big Town.
We would go out and watch, like, all the guys in the band would go out and watch their sound check to figure out what they were doing vocally. Like, they're just, they're that good. And again, their story, for anyone that has never heard it, like, at one point they lost their deal midway through, and a couple of the guys were valets at a local steakhouse in Nashville wearing their hats because they'd had a hit and nobody knew who they were and they were afraid they'd get seen. So, like, I have a lot of respect for Little Big Town. Kenny Rogers was, to me, is an all-time great, and also an all-time educator. Like, the first night my band opened for Kenny at the time, we bombed. We were playing the Sahara in Vegas, and, like, it was this old, like, we were these 5 young, like, we thought we knew everything, man, and we were so wrong. And we, like, worked this set, and we went out. And when I say bombed, like, we didn't even get applause after some songs. And it was like all these grannies that were just sitting there, and they're like, and so we're walking off stage. Kenny's standing right there. And he says, come to my dressing room afterwards. I'll tell you what you did wrong. So we went to his dressing room afterwards, and he's like, hey, this is a lesson I think of in sports all the time. He said, you forgot your audience. You performed for yourself instead of performing for the people that are here. Hear the type of music, hear the songs that they love. Here's what they want to hear from you guys. And he knew our material from our demo at that point that hadn't been released enough that he'd be like, these are the songs you should be reworking. And he gave us all of this advice. And so we did a lot of acapella work and a lot of acoustic work. We pulled an all-nighter. And the next night, same casino, we did exactly what Kenny said. Crowd went nuts. Standing ovation.
Wow.
They were, and he was right. And so, like, I think that, like, and when I decided to leave the band I was in, it was Kenny that actually called me. It was like, hey, here, you're going to leave the band. I just wanted to talk you through it, make sure you're really comfortable with the decision, and tell you how I went through that process when I did it in my life. So I think that stuff is, like, what's cool about country is that it truly is community. Like, I can look at Jason Aldean's drummer performer. And remember when we would all sit at a bar and we couldn't figure out who was paying the tab. You hoped you could like Irish ghost it quickly. You'd be like, hey, bye. And you hoped you wouldn't get stuck with it. Like, I think for so many of us, we grew up on these gigs together that the sense of community is part of what makes it great. And quickly, Chris Stapleton is just better than it. Chris Stapleton. Yeah.